Hey gang, welcome back to Ken Michaels Radio, where we talk about the Beatles on all of our shows. And there's no telling what the subject matter is going to be. And actually, I think it's a little bit predictable with Mind Games, the box set being released. Actually, today, July 12th, is the release date for John's Mind Games album. I thought we'd invite Madeline Bocaro back to our channel, and she is the author of, hold up the book. You got your copy, I got mine. We could
Soft cover,
twice here.
hardcover. Yeah.
In Your Mind, the Infinite Universe of Yoko Ono. So we could have a bit of a different angle. Yep. You can even bring it up closer if you want. Um, on the Mind Games album and just talk about what influence Yoko was for that album and that time. And I thought we'd also discuss because July 1st marked another anniversary. Every week there's an anniversary of the You Are Here exhibit, John's exhibit, which was his first on his own at the Robert Fraser Gallery. That was July the 1st in London. So welcome back to the channel, Madeline.
Thanks so much, Ken. It's great to be with you.
And I would also invite everybody watching to watch some of the earlier interviews that she did here on the channel. And she was also on my other podcasts as well with Things We Said Today and Talk More Talk, all enjoyable conversations with Madeline. Should we talk about You Are Here first or Mind Games? What do you prefer?
How about you were here? Because it kind of happened first, right?
Okay. But
So,
like I said, it was John's first exhibit. And interesting thing is it kind of reminds me of when John first met Yoko because he went up the ladder and he saw the word yes. And here for the You Are Here exhibit, there was a white canvas where John just wrote the words You Are Here in small print. So a little
yes,
Yoko influence
homage.
there.
In homage to his favorite Yoko piece that led to their meeting. So that was cool. And they had little badges that said you are here that they gave out at the exhibition as well. And that the song actually, You Are Here, was written in 1968. But he just finished it off later on. But yes is the answer. That's another thing. And the line in the song Mind Games
Hmm.
stems from Yoko's piece, Ceiling Painting. Um, and I just think that's such a beautiful song, You Are Here, because from Liverpool to Tokyo, right? 3,000 miles over the ocean. Um, that it has a little bit of thinking about it, beautiful boy in it, right? Like it's got that Asian style melody, and you kind of like
Hmm.
similar melody in a way. And I never really realized that because they're so far apart. But when listening to it now and all the elements, you just hear these beautiful tones, and it just reminds me of Beautiful Boy so much. But
Oh My
yeah,
Love, maybe. Oh My Love has kind of like an Asian
yes,
element.
yes. Mhm. So yeah, I mean, he's the You Are Here exhibition was at Robert Fraser Gallery. He was like a socialite, he was friends with all the rock stars, especially the Stones. And he had this gallery, Robert Fraser Gallery. And when John first got together with Yoko, he moved to Montague Square and they collaborated on this exhibition together. And they'd only been together just a month at the time. And
Hmm.
John didn't really want to make a big deal, of it. But, he didn't want to overshadow her, whatever, but he staged the exhibition for her. And they had already recorded Two Virgins and their film number 5, Smile, at Kenwood.
Hmm.
And they staged a corn piece already at Coventry Cathedral. So they had really hit the ground running when they got together. It was event after event after album after exhibition. So, Fraser was a friend of the pop stars and artists that he presented at his gallery. And he's the one who gave Paul McCartney the Magritte painting of the apple, which inspired the Apple logo.
Right.
And he also recommended Peter Blake to the Beatles to design Sgt. Pepper cover. And, and then even Richard Hamilton who did the White Album cover, said that, you know, he couldn't follow Peter Blake with all that color, so he threw the dabble of white in there. And he there's a quote from him, and he said, I think partly because Yoko would have seen the point. I think she may have been influential. So it's all related, you know. And
Yeah, I
the
was thinking about that with the White Album cover. It's just, you know, as minimalistic as you could get.
right.
So that's something that Yoko, I think, would favor. But
Yeah.
I also wanted to ask you, because the whole idea at the You Are Here exhibit, they had 365 balloons and they had tags attached to them where you can write back to the gallery, and John would write back to those fans that wrote to them a message. It's kind of like it's very Yoko.
The
And
wish tree tags. It's the
exactly, yeah, that's what I
yeah.
was thinking.
And he said, John says that he was reminded of a childhood memory had of finding a balloon in a field or something in a field. And he thought, wow, this is a great way to get feedback on the show too. He thought people would write back and say what they thought of the exhibition, but half the messages were nasty. It was unfortunate, but and they were making a film to put out at the time, which never got made. And that's what's released as the video for this song 50 years later. It was beautiful to see it.
Yeah, I know. You get to see all the people that attended,
Yeah.
you
Get
know,
to see
there too.
everybody's there. John Dunbar's even there from Indica Gallery. I had the pleasure of meeting him last summer, and he loves the book, and he actually gave it to Marianne Faithfull, who he was married to at one time. He's kind of taking care of her now. So yeah, you see everybody in that video, and it's beautiful to see in color because you've only seen black and white pictures of it. So that's a thrill.
Very nice. Kevin Harrington is actually in there.
Right, redhead kid.
The only person with red hair that you'll find.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's very interesting to look back on this. There's also a lot of charity items that they had there with charity boxes to make
Right.
donations.
Hmm.
The idea behind that? Did they want this to become a charity event, John and Yoko?
I think it was John's idea, and they're always giving, you know, like Yoko donates to charity constantly anonymously and never mentions it. So yeah, it was all about giving and sharing, and that's one of the things John put in there.
Hmm. It's interesting. Sign of things to come for all the different projects that John and Yoko did. But it is kind of fascinating, you know, within 1 month that they did all that work.
Oh yeah, it's incredible. And more came, much more.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah.
So before we talk about mind games and your thoughts about Yoko and what influence she may have been for the album, what's your thoughts about the album itself? Is it a favorite of yours or what?
Oh, definitely. I mean, everything John did is fantastic, but this one, you know, he was on the verge of a separation with Yoko. She was very instrumental in the album as well. You know, I'm losing my picture here with you. I can't see you, so I have to
Oh,
find you again.
I can see you fine.
Okay, here we go. So yeah, I mean, two of my favorite songs of John's are on this album, and one of them is Out the Blue, and one of them is Ice in the Sun. And they're both, you know, to Yoko, of course, but I think they're just gorgeous love songs. And now hearing the mixes, the elements, and everything about this album is so the tone of the instruments, eh, just the beauty and the serenity of each instrument that when it's taken out of the context that it was in, where it was so dense and lush and you know so much going on, and now you hear each individual piece. Now I see why they paired it with a meditation app. It's just so calming and healing and relaxing. So I just the beauty of these songs was so buried. Although they sound fine the way they are when you take them apart, it's unbelievable how what care and what you know just how it was all orchestrated and just the tone that he got out of every instrument.
Yeah, I mean, Sean and all the parties involved should be commended for all the work that's put into the box set. I've been saying now this should be the template for all box sets because when you break things down and you hear the instrumentation stripped down like one instrument at a time, you realize the beauty of what's being played even
Yeah,
more
it's
so.
been done in a lot of box sets before, not just Lennon and Beatles, but this particular one, it's just the word tonal is related to tonic. And
Yeah.
in this case, I think it really is, it's just what are those Tibetan bowls where they hit those bowls and make these specific, healing sounds. I think they're all in there.
Okay. This is just, I'm going to ask you this opinion because we did a show on Talk More Talk with Chip Mattinger, the first of two parts, by the way, on mind games. But because of all the turmoil that John was going through at the time, difficulties with Yoko, immigration authorities on his back all the time, was this an album that you think John just gave his heart, fully for, or was it, every year he's got to put out an album. This is an obligation to the record company. I'm sure he loves being in the studio, but was this an album that you think, he gave his all for, or was it more so that he had to do it? In your opinion here, or based on whatever.
My opinion would be that, sometime in New York City was that quick, put together, quick newsprint
Hmm,
journalistic output. And this one, in a way, he was in that mode. And he did this pretty quickly also. But I think there's a lot more emotion in his voice. He's giving it all vocally. He's not just phoning it in. I mean, this is a brilliant, and he puts it down more than any of us do. I mean, he's not his favorite, but I think there's so much merit in this album.
yeah. I also feel, I mean, you could disagree with me here, and I said this many years ago, because right before he died, he downplayed mind games and walls and bridges, and walls and bridges was the work of a semi-sick craftsman and all of this. But maybe he didn't want the world to think that some of his best work was when he was away from Yoko or not getting along with Yoko.
I
What
don't
do
know.
you think?
I mean, that never even dawned on me, who's always thinking about them together. But it was probably how he was feeling at the time. He wasn't particularly at home with himself on those two records. I mean, Mind Games more so he was with Yoko still, and she was there in the studio, and she was, he was using her musicians, right, from Feeling the Space on that album, the Plastic UFO band, he titled it. So, but Walls and Bridges, he was more desperate, than alone. So it's all beautiful work, but when he looks back on the memories of the time, he's probably not fond of the time. So he dismisses the work.
It's a shame because you're taking it out on the music, which I think is fantastic, Mind Games is one of those albums that for me, because it hasn't been examined enough, it's really underappreciated in John's catalog, whereas everybody points to Plastic Ono Band and Imagine, and then later Double Fantasy, and all those albums in the middle there, get pushed aside. And
Yeah.
sometime in New York City is always criticized for John being way too political, and it was a sign of the times, and it's dated, and all of this. But Mind Games and Walls and Bridges are two of his finest works, I think. And it's a shame that it's been kind of glossied over, but thankfully with a box set like this, there'll be more of an examination.
Yeah. And I think the emotion is back on those two albums. And sometimes in New York City, it was kind of a break between Imagine and Mind Games. And in a way, Imagine and Mind Games, what Crippled Inside, Tight As, the ballads it's kind of the same formula.
No, it's really like more like an Imagine type album, the
Yeah.
latest Imagine album. But I copied here this quote from John where he described the album. He said, "The Mind Games single is fine, but there's just no energy to sustain through the album, and there's no clarity of vision. That cover, the album cover, says more than the record to me."
Mm. Yeah, that's his viewpoint. He created the cover himself.
Yeah.
So he's walking away or he's being sent away, whatever it represents, you know, the mountain, she's the mountain. Yeah, maybe he wasn't so fond of it. Maybe he didn't think it was cohesive. Um, the title track is a masterpiece. I mean, I don't see, it was a single, you know, did pretty well. It wasn't, Imagine didn't even do well at its time, so it was all relative, I think. But I just think that the love songs on there are incredible, and the backing vocalists, they sound heavenly when they're isolated, and it's a lot put into that. A lot of orchestrations put into that album, and now we can see it all.
Hey, I agree with you, but you know, I'm not afraid to say that there are plenty of times when I didn't agree with John's point of view. I think
Mhm.
he was extremely critical of his own music, even the Beatles' music.
Yeah.
You know, so we could all agree to disagree and still, you know, still love John.
Yeah, and I think you know, and you are here with the East is East and West is West theme. You know, he's referring to that Rudyard Kipling poem. And there's like a final line of that poem that there is neither East or West border. When two strong men stand face to face, though they come from the ends of the earth. So, you know, he was always referring to something, some poetic thing, whether it was Browning or, it's just nice.
Hmm. You know, one of the things that I wasn't aware of until Chip brought it up on our podcast on Talk More Talk was that Yoko was involved in co-producing the initial backing sessions for Mind Games.
Yeah, you hear a voice on some of the tapes, and you can hear her saying, you know, it's too heavy, like the other take, it was more like floating. She was all about that. Even the Imagine session, she's saying, no, you're playing on the piano too heavy. It should be, you know, she had a feeling for this stuff. And yeah, she was a big part of it all. I don't see why people want to separate her from it.
No, I just think a lot of people aren't aware of it. And, you know, when you see something like the Imagine sessions where Yoko's talking to John and making suggestions about the music, it surprises people that she had input, people that aren't as educated about John's music and how involved she was too.
Right. Well, the documentary, that Above Us Only Sky,
Yeah.
it's showing it all. That he was asking her, what's this chord? And she's like, D flat diminished seventh, you know. So, but it's interesting, what I have a great quote from her, which is showing that, you know, basically a mind game can be a bad thing or a good thing, you know, but in John's case, he's saying if we play them together, it's a good thing. And that's what Sean based the whole box set on, these games, right? Like
Mm.
bringing everyone together to play a game. But this is a cool quote. It's about that. She said, obviously, I learned all about rock and pop from John. He had a very astute observations about people on a realistic level that I didn't have. Surrealism is very natural for me. It's easy for me to describe my emotions in a surrealistic way. The one, wait a second, now I'm having. Um, Here was this guy who was very straightforward. If I was beating around the bush, he would say, what do you really mean? You can read a surrealistic poem and not know what they're talking about. It's word weaving or mind weaving. You think it all seems beautiful, but what's the point? I would have headed toward that, maybe. I might have been a nice old middle-class spinster. Instead, John gave me back the body. He woke me up from my mind game. That was very healthy for me.
Mm.
So she's talking in a sense of, she was all out there in the ethereal mind world where she operates in the subconscious and all that. And when he first encouraged her to do music with him was the Plastic Ono Band album in 1970. And he gives her Ringo and Carl Sporman and himself and gives her a beat. And she's like, oh, okay, now I have a root, you know?
Uh-huh. It's just amazing how the two of them influenced and benefited each other, and they learned from each other so much. And Yoko even said the song Mind Games and the concept of playing mind games with each other is very much ahead of its time. That
Right.
people couldn't maybe fully grasp that when the song first came out.
Yeah. And he turned it into a positive, right? I mean,
Hmm.
mind games is construed as, you're toying with me or you're trying to put one over. But he was like, no, mind games together.
Right. Can you talk a little bit about, because I love Aisuma Sen, one of the songs that you pointed out there. Um, and in Japanese it means I'm sorry, the subtitle of Aisuma Sen.
He got it a little bit wrong. It's Aisumimasen, but
Oh, okay. All right. And there's also the word sanpaku in the song, which, not being aware of what that meant, I went and looked it up online. And I'll just read what it says here. It's a Japanese term meaning three whites. According to Japanese and Chinese face readings, the eye is composed of two parts, the yin, the black iris and pupil, and yang, the white, the sclera. The visibility of the sclera beneath the iris is said to represent physical imbalance in the body and is claimed to be present in alcoholics, drug addicts, and people who overconsume sugar or grain. So you're in some kind of trouble
yeah,
if you're in Senpaku. I
yeah.
was wondering if you knew how much Japanese John learned. How much did Yoko teach him? I mean, I know they visited Japan a lot.
Well, he's very, very astute. So he picked up words, right? And then later on, and when they visited Japan in the summers in the last few years of his life, he started really studying and drawing the kanji and drawing little cartoons representative of the kanji. So I don't know how much. I don't know. I don't think he could speak a sentence, but he just wanted to throw that element in there. And I think now that I'm hearing these piano bits and on their own, it's very Plastic Ono band, very God. It's incredible to hear it this way.
Yeah, actually, Sean just said something just like that. There's an issue of Uncut Magazine where there's a lot of features on my.
Oh yeah, I have to get that.
And he said he really appreciated, he never realized how great a song I Assume Sen is.
Hmm.
Listens to it now, he hears Plastic Ono Band in it.
I hear that. And then that Spinoza guitar on there is incredible.
Years ago, he told me that was one take in the studio. The first take, I'm pretty sure, of I Assume Sen, what he played there. Towards the end, that lead guitar work is amazing.
Yeah, it's the last fade out thing.
Yeah. But and certainly one of the things that we know about from Yoko's influence, that it was that she wanted John's music to be more personal, really being very, it's one thing to write a song like Help. John's music was always personal to begin with, but he was even more personal through Yoko's influence. Um, something like Julia, and then later on, certainly Plastic Ono Band music. That's about really bearing your soul there.
Mhm.
So there are a lot of apologetic songs, as we've said in John's
Right.
career, Jealous Guy being one of his most famous. And then you've got something like I Know, which to me, I think is a masterpiece, as is Out the Blue.
Oh yeah.
And you read the lyrics here, and I certainly sense Yoko's influence. I'll read some of them. Um, for I Know, I Know. I know what's coming down and I know where it's coming from, and I know and I'm sorry, yes I am, but I never could speak my mind. And I know just how you feel, and I know now what I have done, and I know and I'm guilty, yes I am, but I never could read your mind. I know what I was missing, but now my eyes can see. I put myself in your place as you did for me. Today I love you more than yesterday. Right now I love you more right now. And finally, I know it's coming down. I can feel where it's coming from, and I know it's getting better all the time as we share in each other's minds. That whole idea of two people, one mind, you know. Um, what was the other song that John was talking about with that? Um,
Two minds, one destiny.
yes,
Well,
there you go. Say
Yeah.
no.
You know, she wanted him to open up, but she also wanted him to sing about things that were important because it's like, you know, millions of people are hearing what you say. Why don't you say something important? And when they would ask her what's her favorite song, she would say, well, I can't say Bebopalula because, you know, it's meaningless to her. She wanted, you know, meaning.
When during the process of this album, they were still living together. At what point did John actually leave? And did he live in New York without her for a while, or did he just go straight to LA with May?
No, they moved into the Dakota the first week in May of 73, right? And then, you know, she was doing her like promotion for Approximately Infinite Universe at the time. Still, they did that program Flipside,
Hmm.
where she performed some of the songs live in there. And that was in May. And she did a concert at Town Hall at that time as well. And then they both went to that feminist conference in Cambridge. So they were together, you know, and Yoko's working on Feeling the Space and with the same musicians that he started using in September for Mind Games. And then it was September when he went to LA with May. You
Okay.
know, it's just,
Because I remember asking May years ago, is Mind Games part of the Lost Weekend? And she said yes. But when we were discussing this on Talk More Talk, the recording of it was not.
no.
The
The
promotion of it,
single came out in November.
yeah,
So he was promoting the album and the single came out. So that was his current project. Yeah.
right. So because the album came out while he was with May, she looks at it that way.
Yeah, she can look at it that way. I mean, it's true in a way, but he was here when he recorded it in New York.
Hmm. Okay. Um, in a way, and I never really thought about this, maybe I'm putting thoughts in my brain, which could be dangerous. Um, because of the fact that Imagine was recorded with John's friends, basically, great musicians, and Elephant's Memory with a band of its own already ready made.
Mhm.
Here was an album with basically a lot of studio people. The A game
They
here.
were assembled, I think, by Roy Sakala, right? They
Well,
got together.
Chip had said that these were Jim Keltner's um, suggestions
Oh,
of
cool.
who to bring for Feeling the Space and then for Mind Games. So does it sound more like, a very polished studio album with studio musicians? Does it have a different vibe to it altogether for you than say Imagine does?
No, it's different than Sometime in New York City because that was a band in itself. And they had a sound, they had a sax, they had, it was like it was a band. And this sounds like seasoned session musicians who just gelled very well.
They sure did. I just had the pleasure and the privilege of going to a session, a listening session for the Mind Games box set, and many of the musicians were there. And it was either David Spinoza or Ken Asher that said John's songs had a way of just when you listen to them, you kind of know what to play, or it just fits naturally, you
Yeah.
know? And it just seems like these musicians really gelled so well.
Right.
And in reading the interview that Sean gave to Uncut Magazine, he's really appreciating the musicianship behind Mind Games and especially what Ken Asher brought on the piano. And you listen to Out the Blue, especially in the piano solo in there, and in the box set, you can hear what sometimes gets buried in the mix by the piano and other outtakes and stuff like that. And the piano playing, all the playing is great, but that's one of the thrills in getting to hear all these different versions, whether they're outtakes or they're different mixes, is that you get to hear stuff that maybe you didn't hear before, whether they belong there or not. That's a whole other issue and it's a whole other debate. There's more bass than I've ever heard before, and there's more drums than I've ever heard before. And
Mhm.
John's voice is right there in the clear, and it's raw.
It
It's
is.
without having all the reverb and
And
whatever.
even especially Meat City,
Hmm.
hearing some of the elements. It's incredible because, well, at the time, of course, John was facing deportation. So that was a Free the People and Meat City were kind of big for him. And I don't know, it's just amazing. Like, I think Meat City is the most dense of all these songs, and to pull that apart, it's like to hear the individual tracks is amazing.
It has a real raw sound to it for me. And listening to the outtakes. Well, there's one outtake of Meat City that's one of the highlights of the outtakes disc.
Oh,
He's ad-libbing towards the end and he's singing a little bit of the locomotion and keep your hands off my baby. So I bet Carole King was very happy that this is coming out. Anyway, any final thoughts that you want to say about Yoko and her influence at this time and for this album?
well, they were still together. They were having trouble. They were breaking up. But these songs, if you just listen to these lyrics, he didn't want to leave. He didn't want to go. You know, he was just begging and apologizing, and it was a deep, deep love story between them. And people try to deny it. People try to pull it apart. I don't know why. They were the most truthful and honest people. And people are trying to read way too much into, you know, why they broke up, or perpetuating lies about her, especially, that aren't true. And it's just really sad that they can't appreciate what they were trying to do for everyone, to share this love, to share the positivity, to help the world, help world peace. They had good motives. These are good people. And I just wish people would open their minds more and listen to how much he cared about her, and find out why. Because once I met her, I immediately realized why he loved her. She's so warm and special, intelligent, brilliant. And my book has it all. I mean, it's an incredible story. She has so much to offer, so much wisdom about John and about herself and about ourselves, and how we're not using our inner power and we're off the mark when it comes to our values. And, you know, just a beautiful person is being vilified for absolutely no reason. It's really sad. But we're glad to have Mind Games. I mean, I'm just so happy. I can't wait to hear the whole thing.
Mm,
It's just a revelation in a lot of ways.
yeah. Well, all you got to do really is listen to the lyrics when you're talking about these love songs for Yoko. Out the blue. I mean, out the blue you came to me and blew away life's misery. You know, all my life has been a long, slow knife. I was born just to get to you. You know, how can you not look at that and realize that this is for real and this is how John really felt about Yoko?
And then look at all the songs she wrote for him, all the things she said about him. She spent 40 years of her life after he passed away talking about him and his love for her, giving the world all his music that he left behind. It was all about him for her, you know, that you can learn so much about him through her.
That's true. I didn't get to talk to you about the Nutopia national anthem. What did you think of the whole concept of Nutopia, which you know had to come at least partly from Yoko?
Yeah, so that was her little invention. It was because he was being in the midst of the immigration trial, and his attorney held a press conference to announce the appeal of his deportation in March. And on April Fool's Day, they wrote up the little Declaration of Nutopia, and all the laws in their declaration would never be deported, because there's no boundaries. There's no what do you call it, passports, only people, and everybody is a member of Nutopia. It's a free country. So but Leon Wiles did a great thing. You know, they surprised him by pulling out these handkerchiefs and waving the flag of surrender. He didn't even know they were going to do it, but he was great. He convinced the judges that, you know, they were a couple and that they would have very bad hardship because their separation would cause tremendous stress because they relied upon each other heavily for their well-being, and they were psychologically dependent on each other. And he even asked them to wear matching suits and ties at the courtroom so they would appear as a set, that the judge wouldn't want to break them. He was really intricate in his thinking, but you know, he noticed through the laws that there was nothing in the law that said that John should be deported for this reason, and the drug bust in the, you know, in London. And it became the basis of Obama's DACA statute, where it protected a lot of immigrants in the future. So everything John and Yoko did became a big, you know, a big thing. But this was a good one. This was a good turnout.
You know, in a way, it kind of reminds me of what John said about Imagine. You know, what is this about having countries and borders and we're separated and all of this, and carrying it further with this idea of Nutopia.
Right. I mean, it was a beautiful idea. You know, they had the Nutopian embassy plaque in their kitchen door.
By the way, I don't know if anyone can see, but I'm wearing this shirt right here. It's Yoko.
Oh, it's the cover. Yeah, there it is.
That was given to me.
The art is by this Australian artist, Kat McInnes.
Uh-huh.
I thought it was beautiful. Yoko loved it too, so I was happy that.
Okay. Have you, I know that you've gotten, you know, praise from Sean on the book as well as Elliot Mintz, and has Yoko said anything about has she read the whole book, or
Yoko has it. Yoko's quiet. Yoko hasn't said anything about much, you know, in a while. So that's the way she's got to be now. So
hey, yeah, she's 91, God bless her. Be
yeah.
thankful for every day we have with her. All right, so thank you so much, Madeline, and by all means, please get the book. Again,
It's available on Amazon. Hardcover is only available through me at conceptualbooks.com.
all right. And we'll talk to you soon. Thanks to all of you for watching, and peace and love. Keep playing those mind games forever.